All right. Hello, Jenny. It's good to see you tonight.
Hi, Jamie. It's good to see you too.
So, where are you right now?
Well, I am currently at my kitchen table in Palmyra, Pennsylvania, right next to Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Okay. And you are an East Coaster. You are originally from Maryland, right?
Yes.
How did you end up in Pennsylvania?
Oh, that's a great question. So I grew up in Baltimore County and I went to IUP. So I actually had a good 4.5 years in Western Pennsylvania in college and student teaching. And then I came home and taught in Baltimore County for about 10 and a half years, and then made the decision to move to teach at the Milton Hershey School in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I've been there, oh my goodness, for over a decade now.
Oh, wow. So, why IUP from Baltimore County, Maryland? What made you choose IUP?
So actually, I did not intend to go to IUP. My mom and dad both went to IUP, and we were doing our college tour. And we went to see Grove City, which is a very small private school. We went to see Slippery Rock. We were kind of looking at schools up in that part of Pennsylvania. I really wanted to go away to college and just have a different experience than I had had. And my parents love the Oak Grove at IUP. And so they were just, we need to go, we need to walk through the Oak Grove. And I got there and it was really just what I thought I was looking for. I wanted to kind of experience what would feel like a college town instead of being in kind of the suburbs of Baltimore. And so I ended up somewhere very different than where I grew up.
It's funny how that happens.
Yes.
Yes. And then, so you arrive on campus, you're a 17, 18-year-old freshman. At what point did you decide sorority life was for you?
Oh, wow. So I actually took a very long time to make up my mind. My mom is actually an Alpha Sigma Tau as well. And since she went to IUP, that was, certainly her home chapter. So I always had an awareness of Alpha Sigma Tau from looking through her photo albums, from listening to my parents talk about college. And so I was very interested, but didn't make the decision until I was a second semester sophomore to go through the recruitment process.
Now, we've known each other a long time.
Yes.
I'm curious because I feel like I know the answer to this, but what did you think about the recruitment process? Like, did you like it? Was it your thing? Was it intimidating? Like, how did you find recruitment?
So I was going through kind of a continuous open bidding process. And at that time, IUP just sort of kept shifting when formal recruitment was. So we would often have a few semesters that were COB, and formal recruitment would go kind of from the fall to the spring. But, I went we had suites at that time at IUP and kind of the bottom of the residence halls where we held recruitment. And I remember I love to meet people. I love to talk. So I had a great time. I was asking the sisters questions. I didn't quite realize the way that probably this process was going to unfold is that other people were going to ask me questions and get to know me. So I remember, several people sharing that with me later on. Like nobody's ever really walked in and started to ask everybody else questions in the
I
room as
love it.
well. So
I
yeah,
love it.
classic.
And classic Jenny, but that's what makes you unique, right? And well suited to being on the council, I think.
Well, thank you.
What uh, what types of roles and responsibilities did you have when you were in the chapter?
Well, I was older when I joined, so I really only had one opportunity to hold an executive committee office. And we had a different officer structure at that time than we do now. And I really wanted to do a lot of different things. But I ended up as the vice president, and at that time, academics was a really key focus for the vice president. And as an education major, that was a really fun role for me. I tried to make it fun. So at the time, hair scrunchies were very, very big in the mid 90s. And I actually had a couple friends from home that could sew. I could not sew, but I could cut out fabric and, cut out elastic and help. And so we made the academic scrunchie. And that was for 2 semesters, if you had a good grade, you could call me. We had a weekly drawing, only the lucky few got to have the academic scrunchie
Oh,
as the semester unfolded. So I really enjoyed that role in the chapter.
so it sounds like all of those little seeds were being planted for you to be an educator, right? To work with young people.
Mhm.
Did you know that you wanted to be in the education space? I mean, is that why you went to college, or is that something that came to you later?
I was actually undecided as a college freshman. Both of my parents are educators. And so I felt that that was really the only exposure I had. And I wasn't sure, that I wanted to do that as well. So I went in as an undecided college major. I took a lot of liberal studies courses. I actually didn't have quite enough classes in my schedule. And at that time, there was a process called Arena Drop Ad before everything was online, where you had to, if you didn't have enough classes, you had to be in this big space, kind of walking around and trying to find another course. And I was a manager at Little Caesars Pizza in high school, like toward the end of high school. I still know all the toppings in order from answering the phone so
I
many
bet you
times.
do.
I have the best pepperoni arrangements when I make my boys pizza. Um, but I thought there was a hotel restaurant management class. And I thought they're going to let me into this class. I would absolutely love it as the other class. And everything was closed. You didn't have a lot of priority at that time if you were a first semester freshman. So I picked up a hotel restaurant class, which was great. But it did take me until probably toward the end of my freshman year to recognize that I love teaching, I love people, I love learning, and that was really going to be the space as an English education major where I was going to be the most happy in a potential career.
Love that. I mean, not all of us come to that realization. I think many people go to college and they're undecided and they kind of find their way maybe by accident sometimes. And then others get to college and they already have a game plan and they know exactly what they want to do. And so I love hearing people's stories about kind of how they get on that path. And so that makes me think about two questions. One, you mentioned Little Caesars.
Yes.
Did you work when you were in school as well?
I didn't work when I was physically at IUP,
Okay.
but I would come home on breaks and I would continue to work. At that time, Little Caesars was new and it was very fast and fun. And so, we were always packed. Working the register was fun. You were yelling out pizza names, people were clapping. So I really enjoyed it because it went fast. It was my pace. I really liked that quick kind of fun pace. So I probably toward the end of college, I transitioned into other things, but typically when I would come home on break, I would go, or in the summer, go back and continue there.
And what were you getting paid back then? Because I'm thinking I made like 475 or like 525 an hour working at the mall.
Yeah, it was definitely around that. I think there was a slight raise for my manager role, but it was
Yeah.
certainly not impressive by any stretch of the imagination.
And can you eat Little Caesars pizza today?
So I have a very quirky pizza challenge. I do not like mozzarella cheese. I'm probably the only person in the world who does not like mozzarella cheese. So I make cheeseless pizza, which is not very popular with
Yeah.
people.
Weird.
So I don't, and I used to kind of customize, when you work somewhere, you can kind of make your own things that aren't really on the menu. So I don't know that they'd let me back into their kitchen to kind of make it exactly as I would like at this point in life. But I do, my 13-year-old, pizza is his favorite food. Actually, he had some leftover pizza for breakfast this morning. We kind of do a non-traditional breakfast occasionally. So pizza is still very much part of my life, although I'm not a big fan.
Got it. I just would imagine if you worked in a place like that, just even the smell of
Yes.
Little Caesars would probably.
A lot of
So
time with pizza ovens, yes.
what was your first real job after college then?
So I was very fortunate. I graduated in December, and Baltimore County at that time needed a teacher to start right away. So I was able to kind of finish my student teaching, graduate, and then I went right into a classroom in January. And I stayed in Baltimore County Public Schools for 10 and a half years. I really enjoyed it there, but I was immediately transitioning from that college student teaching role right into the professional setting.
You mentioned when we were talking earlier that you are back on campus,
Mhm.
right? You are not working from home right now.
Yes.
What's the plan, if you can share it, kind of what's that going to look like for the rest of the summer and the fall?
Sure. We have students on campus. We are a home and a school, so our students are welcome to return at any time. We currently have summer school, so we have students in all three of our school buildings, and the rest of our student body will be coming back to school in August. Certainly, my children attend public school, and plans are very fluid. As parents of public school students, we know that we need to be ready to change, that this is what the plan is currently, but the plan may change. So I think it's a very challenging time for kids and parents and teachers who are also parents, in really thinking through what the fall is going to look like, and knowing that we may not know, or there may be changes to the plan.
Yeah. So you have two boys. How have they navigated this time?
Well, you'd think as an educator that our online learning would just be going, very, very well. But we have definitely had some challenges. My 10-year-old confessed at one point that he was taking multiple photographs of himself wearing the same outfit so he could change the background and just kind of, do his own thing during the class meeting. But it would be, Connor on the screen. And of course, he'd enter the class initially, and then the backgrounds would go up so he can kind of do his own thing. It was interesting to kind of navigate it from the educator lens, big picture, and then, okay, Connor, we're going to sit down and we're going to watch this video together, and I'm going to take notes on long division, and you're going to take notes on long division. I got really skilled at fourth grade math.
Wow.
But I think, for all kids, it's a challenge. They miss their friends very much. We're now in a space in our area of Pennsylvania where, it is acceptable to have a friend over or to do some things outside together. And I tried to tell my boys over and over how lucky they were to have each other, because, not every child has a sibling, that they can spend their days with. And sometimes that worked really well for them, and other times not so much. So.
Yeah. Well, I I know that our members have had, a lot of challenges
Yes.
during this time, and I think about that a lot. That you're grieving for things and opportunities and experiences that you've missed, and it's hard to not have something to look forward to.
Mhm.
So I think about that a lot, in addition to just the day-to-day challenges that our members are having in completing their academic requirements, trying to keep the chapter, running and going and getting ready for an uncertain fall. Um, so that's something that weighs heavy on me, and is something I know that this council will be thinking about. And I think it's great that you've got that experience, right, as a parent.
Mhm.
And then we've got Amanda, who works on a college campus and can bring that lens to the table. Cassidy being a recent grad, right,
Mhm.
and then Addie, who is anticipating what things are going to look like herself. So I think we've got a really great set of um, eyes
Mhm.
on all these different dynamics, and I'm glad for that, because I think that's going to help us have a really rich discussion about where do we go.
I agree. And it is, certainly chapter leaders right now really have that challenging job of thinking through, how to support their chapter, how to be forward thinking, how to navigate challenges. So a lot of life skills are being, learned through this, but it certainly doesn't make it any less challenging or difficult.
Yeah. And thinking about, so the last 4 months, you've been juggling all the demands, regular life, work, AST stuff. What else do you like to do when it's
Sure.
just Jenni? What is what do you do that brings you joy?
So I do have very little free time right now, but if I do have some available time, I love yoga. I have a good friend who thought, I'd like to go to hot yoga, and I was very resistant at first because it just didn't seem like a good idea to me to be hot
Yeah.
intentionally when exercising. So I was a little resistant, but I went, and I've been practicing yoga for a little over a year. I was very fortunate that my studio went online when we were no longer able to meet in person. And so now it's a little bit of a hybrid. There's like an on-demand platform and an online platform. And I love that Joanna Barrett did yoga for us at the beginning of the quarantine for many of us. And it was so amazing to be able to get on Facebook Live and to practice yoga with Alpha Sigma Taus from across the country. That was really meaningful and empowering, and I really enjoyed that part. So I do a lot of things with my boys. We love to travel. Of course, there's not a lot of travel right now, but we did get a chance to go to the beach and kind of social distance there for a little while, which was really enjoyable.
Good. So you mentioned you don't have a ton of extra time,
Mhm.
noted. Um, and I feel very strongly about this notion of work-life balance. I don't think that it exists, but I'd like to get your take on it. Is there such a thing as work-life balance?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Um, I strive for work-life balance. I try to be really present in what I'm doing because I found that there isn't a benefit in being somewhere but your brain is really somewhere else. So I really try to, when I'm with my boys and maybe we're playing a game or playing Scrabble or playing Legos, I try to have my phone somewhere where I'm not going to see it. I try not to multitask with them. If they walk through the door, the first thing I try to do is shut my laptop. It doesn't always work well. My 10-year-old did say to me on Tuesday night, why are you always on Zoom? And so I get reminders, I get feedback, if I'm
Ah,
not able to kind of maintain that work-life balance. But I would agree with you. I don't think it exists. I'm wondering if the way we've all slowed down during the quarantine will help more people to kind of reevaluate how busy they are and whether that's beneficial or whether they prefer a different pace of life
yeah,
and how that might look, a year from now. I'm very curious.
yeah. Well, I think that's really relevant to the work that we do with the Women's Wellness
Mhm.
Initiative in this idea of kind of the whole person,
Yeah.
right? And all of those different components of wellness. And you've been kind of there at the ground floor, right? As this initiative
Mhm.
has been built. I'm wondering what speaks to you about the Women's Wellness Initiative. What
Sure.
is it that um, in your mind, this is the right focus area for
Mhm.
us to be in?
Sure. I think most of us really want to serve and to serve others, but we're not always sure where the spaces are where we're most needed. And so I love, with the Women's Wellness Initiative and with the partnership with Dress for Success, we've had the opportunity to go to Dress for Success and meet women who benefit from Dress for Success to hands-on help with things, to meet the individuals that work in the Dress for Success affiliates. And so I've always felt that sorority gives me experiences that I would not have found myself. It may be that it's somebody else's passion. Um, Tracy Sabatoni and I have worked on Treats for Troops forever. And that's not something that I would have thought of on my own. But I've had the opportunity to be in that space for a while. So I feel that we often have these opportunities because they're provided to us through sorority. I'm so excited to see what happens with Girls Who Code. And I think, we have so many chapters on campuses with strong science and math programs. I think that's a space where we can really give back to young women and be the mentors that young women need to see themselves as scientists and mathematicians and coders. So I'm very excited for all of that to unfold.
I love that. I think you're so right. And it's been interesting to see with Girls Who Code this summer and since the pandemic started, have had a number of webinars and educational programs, virtual, kind of trying to break down myths and facts about going to college and providing resources and tools for young women who are thinking about, is college the right thing for them? And so I think there's a natural connection there because of the audience that they serve, right? With AST and our members. And so I agree. I'm excited to see where that goes. It's been really fun to watch Dress for Success and how they've kind of evolved a little bit due to the pandemic. I saw a couple affiliates have announced that they're going to start doing like clothing drop off to their clients, meaning they're going to do a virtual styling and then pull a package of clothing together and then drop them off.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which I think is great because many of them have not been accepting donations, and you wonder how they're able to serve their clients, right, in this environment. So that's been cool. And then I heard Joy Gordon do an event with Lean In yesterday, and she said, for 20 years, Dress for Success hasn't been just about the suit, that it's been a lot about the mentorship and the career programs that are provided for women to be confident in their job search, in addition to putting on a suit that makes them feel confident. And I think that's really cool because we have that opportunity to do hands-on service, like you said, and then also to participate in other activities on our campus that promote both of those organizations and others in the future. So I'm with you. I'm excited about the direction that we're going in there and what might lie ahead. And I want to bring that back a little bit to kind of your leadership journey in AST, because you've been a member of the council in a couple different, I don't know, is it fair to say eras? Different eras, maybe?
Decades, yeah.
Decades, eras is, probably better. And, in your first round of service, the council was in a very siloed, operational, everybody had their own portfolio and role and responsibility. And we've now evolved into what we would call a more strategic model where we're focused kind of on the future, right? And we have a great partnership with our headquarters team who is working on the day-to-day. So I'm just curious, you served on the council, you went off and served as an advisor for many years, and now you're back. How has your thinking changed about leadership or yourself as a leader since you first served on the council?
That's a great question. So the very first time I served on the council, I had finished 4 years of volunteering as a district president. And so before we had kind of the headquarters staff contact model, before we had our primary support for chapters coming from our headquarters team, we had volunteers, and the volunteers would have 3 to 4 chapters who they were really responsible for connecting the national organization to those chapters. So part of that role would be to visit for the weekend. And so I would be on campus, which was always really enjoyable. I worked with Westchester, Moravian, the University of the Sciences, LaSalle. So I had kind of that Philly area and kind of beyond, which I really enjoyed. And so in that role, I learned a lot about what type of support chapter presidents need. Some chapters had advisors, some chapters didn't. What kind of leadership journey happens as you transition, seeing the transition, especially for the groups I was able to work with for 4 years, really, it gave me a lot of insight into how important that transition is, how important it is to continue to be involved, even when you're no longer the chapter president. And so I saw in chapters where seniors valued the experience so much that they stayed and mentored, not stayed and got in the way and told everyone what to do, but stayed and mentored. Those chapters were so successful. And so I think, that piece is a big part of my kind of leadership philosophy, that we're never finished. but we need to know how to gracefully step aside and allow someone else to lead and support them, probably in the way they've supported us. And so that ability to change roles is really important to me in my leadership journey. And then I moved into a council role from there, and I was the director of collegiate chapters in our old structure. And really, I was responsible for supporting our collegiate chapters and making sure they had the support they needed. And at that time, our educational consultant program was really new. So we were just a few years into having women who worked for the organization, who were visiting college campuses. So being a volunteer supervising paid staff members while I worked all day was really challenging. So I was often, home at my fake AST headquarters, making phone calls in the evening, checking in. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But after 2 years, it wasn't feasible for me to give that role the energy it needed and be a classroom teacher. And so I continued to volunteer in small ways. And then when I moved to Pennsylvania, I had really missed being active in a role. And I was at Friendly's one day with my boys, and two women in Alpha Sigma Tau shirts walked in. They were Lebanon Valley College Alpha Sigma Taus. And I called headquarters almost immediately and said, I'd like to advise. I had never had a chapter close enough to advise. And that was always really my dream. To be somewhere where I could advise a chapter and be in close proximity. And LVC is 10 minutes from my house. I can get there very quickly, straight down the street. So I spent a good 4 years on Gamma Tau's advisory board. I was their chapter advisor. I absolutely love that. That is my favorite role. I learned so much. And I, was really ready again then to serve at that larger level. So when the opportunity came to run for council, and I felt like I had a sense of all the changes that had taken place, and I'm always so grateful for those changes, because I think about how much time I spent in my formal counselor role in 2002 to 2004, so a long time ago, wishing I had more resources. And really my resources were volunteers. And I was so fortunate that we had passionate volunteers that were willing to do whatever it took to make things work for chapters. But it's such a gift where we are now, that we can focus as a council on the future, on strategic priorities, on having big picture discussions. And then we have our headquarters team that's able to provide that day-to-day support for our chapters. It's really not possible to do both. And so, when my term limit is finished, I may go back into that role, but I really, in that leadership space, I hope that all women will consider that there's always something to do to support the organization. And it may not always be linear, where you just continue to take on a larger and larger role. As things happen in our lives, we may have different fits. The organization may need different things, and it's all important.
Yes, I love that. And I think your perspective in seeing the evolution of the organization, particularly at that chapter services level,
Sure.
is so important, because we are, a distributed team, even on the headquarters staff, because, myth busting here, like not everyone at headquarters, on the staff or the organization actually works at headquarters, right? We have some remote staff, which I think is great. And then I think, the fact that the council, where you may have had really as the DCC, like another full-time job in addition to your real life job, that the expectations for service on the council or on a committee or in another volunteer role it's evolved. Like we're evolving over time to try and help meet those needs and provide opportunities for volunteers. And something that you said about Dress for Success, also reminded me too that our members are doing things together.
Yes.
And it may not be an official AST hosted, branded, sponsored event, but they are performing service or having a social event or getting together on Zoom because they are AST, and therefore it is happening kind of in the spirit of AST. And I think we've got to recognize, to your point, it's not always linear and there's not always a title associated with it, but there are many, many ways to support the organization. And I think you've been a great example of that. And I'm curious too, maybe do you have a little bit of a preview on Treats for Troops, what that's going to look like this year?
A great question. The Treats for Troops committee is very actively working on how to make this work with social distancing and how to do it safely. And so we know that we have servicemen and women who are deployed who would like to have treats. And so we believe we're going to make it happen, but it's a little bit to be determined. But I'm sure you will see some information soon if you follow our Treats for Troops Facebook page.
Awesome. So the short version of the story is that you have a group of women who come together and assemble bags of goodies that are then shipped forward overseas to our men and women in uniform. And then it generally happens around Halloween-ish.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And we certainly, we wanted to support Alpha Sigma Tau sisters who are deployed. We are often supporting spouses of Alpha Sigma Tau sisters who are deployed, children of Alpha Sigma Tau sisters who are deployed, but we also support other individuals who may not be directly associated with an Alpha Sigma Tau sister.
Well, I'm a big fan. Being a military brat, I'm all in. I love it. I can't wait to place my order on Amazon. So
excellent.
That's great. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit, stay on sort of on that leadership track, but I'm curious about your AST mentors, right? I know you as a volunteer and throughout your AST career, you've worked with a lot of really talented women, and I'm curious, what kinds of advice have you gotten from these women, over time that has stuck with you?
Sure. I think the one thing that's really unique about Alpha Sigma Tau is your mentor is not always somebody who's older. So I've learned just as much from sisters who are younger, who have different life experiences. I think the intergenerational component of our sisterhood is really special because you seldom have the opportunity to connect in that way, kind of across generations. But it's certainly that sense of needing to take care of the organization. It's not enough to just benefit from the things that we are privileged to have as Alpha Sigma Tau members. It's important to take care of our chapters, our sisters, the organization as a whole, the needs of our members. And so that's certainly been directly communicated, but also through action. That's something that's really stuck with me over time, that we have a responsibility to make sure that future women have the opportunity to be Alpha Sigma Taus on as many campuses as possible. And we have that responsibility. I think transparent communication, the idea that we are going to get farther as a group if we have those honest conversations with each other, if we talk with members who disagree with a position or with an idea and invite those women in. So certainly that idea of being transparent, being honest, being open has been really important to me. And then the other piece is, when your mentors don't all have the same profession that you do. One of the things I've really learned from mentors is how work looks other places. I'm a secondary educator, and surprisingly, things don't happen at other people's places of employment the same way that they do at mine all the time. And so that's always fun for me to serve with women who work in these different spaces, because you are getting certainly insight into what's important for Alpha Sigma Tau, but you also have this opportunity for tremendous growth because you are able to watch the way that somebody else navigates a conversation who works in a completely different space than you do.
Yeah, yes, I completely agree with that. And I think that's relevant for whether you're a council member or a collegiate member, right? That you're learning up and down
Mhm.
right? Not just
Mhm.
across, that being in a multi-generational organization like we are allows us kind of immediate access to
Mhm.
people who have either walked the path that we're on and can give us advice, or have walked a different path and we can learn from them too. And I think that's really cool. I think, when I explain to people, what it is, why I'm flying to Indianapolis, to go to headquarters for,
Right.
for a board meeting,
Mhm.
why I'm passionate about that. And so I share that kind
Mhm.
of those values and things that experiences that you shared. So thank you for that. And can you talk a little bit though about how maybe something you've learned in AST you've applied in your professional life?
Sure, absolutely. Um, I think I've learned a lot in my Alpha Sigma Tau role. So I think one of the biggest things that I've learned, though, is how to work as a very effective team, even with women who I have perhaps never met before. And I think sometimes, we come together to solve problems across miles. And what keeps us, feeling very positive about that is our shared Alpha Sigma Tau experience. And I hadn't thought until recently how really unique that is, that, we have a challenge, we've never met in person, we're going to form a relationship, whether it's we're going to support a chapter, as the Panhellenic contact and the chapter advisor, and we're going to work together on that. We're going to serve on a committee together. So I think that that ability to form relationships without meeting someone in person, and then to continue to have this really rich collaboration without the in-person component. That's something that I think has even helped me in our virtual environment with education, having so many experiences where, we're having a 2-hour council meeting and we're all on Zoom. And so
Yeah.
how do you make sure that, you are really engaged and present and doing all the same things you would do in person? And so I did feel ahead on the Zoom curve.
Yeah,
Uh,
me too.
when we went there. So I was like, okay, guys, now it's time for everybody to mute themselves. Now you're not muted. All the things that we do so naturally because we know, how the platform works and how it benefits our operations.
Yes. I mean, Tiffany, her will leave a long legacy of many things, but one of them is being an early adopter of Zoom as an
Absolutely.
example.
Absolutely. She should have done like a little commercial spot. We should have really worked through that.
Probably, probably so. Yeah. And speaking of Tiffany, something she said in her kind of state of the sorority address at the end of convention, where she talked about resilience and confidence as being some of the kind of keys to success. I'm wondering about maybe a time where you took a risk, or failed or made a mistake, and how did you bounce back from that? How did you recover? How do you handle failure?
Mhm.
And you talk about resilience as the ability to respond and rebound, right, from failure, and move on. I'm just curious about maybe some things that you've learned through trying something and failing.
Sure. That's a great question. I think, certainly as a classroom teacher, lots of opportunities to practice, to get better. I might have in my mind the absolute best concept for a lesson, or I might have a text that I want to share, a novel or a short story or a poem that I feel is going to be so meaningful and engaging for my students. And the student response is not always, what I have crafted in my mind, what I think is going to happen. So in the classroom, you learn to very quickly change your plan if it's not working, and to read the room, and to do the formative assessment or to get the feedback, and to change course. So I think I am always considering kind of others' experiences in the moment, because so much of my success or failure in my career has been based on, my ability to teach or my ability to convey an idea or facilitate a discussion. And so I think, definitely that resilience to not be frustrated, to maybe stop and listen instead of continuing to talk, to give people time to process. So all of those pieces apply, in the sorority space as well. If you're working in an advisory role, whether it's, more of an occasional advisory role or you're there on a regular basis, knowing that perhaps the way that you are approaching a member might work for most members, but not for that particular individual. And so how you really read clues, and try something different and not be afraid to say, I'm not sure what's going to be most helpful to you in this moment. I'd like to support you. What is it that I can do differently? What is it that you need? What are you still thinking about? So just that idea of being curious, I think, can help a lot in that process of trying again.
Yeah. So thinking about something fun, some favorite memories that you've had, either as a collegian or as an alumna, what memories stand out in your mind from your AST experience?
So if I go back to my collegiate memories, there were so many things that I got to experience at IUP that just did not exist in my universe growing up in the suburbs of Baltimore. Pumping the homecoming float. I love that. I love the idea that you got to create a float, you got to ride on it in a parade. I love the whole concept of homecoming, just the return of alumni, the return of students to campus. And so I love the fall, especially at IUP. It's just a great time. So I have so many memories of just that homecoming weekend, the preparation. We did something called Greek Sing at IUP, but it wasn't singing. It was more of a choreographed dance, routine. And so, I'm not a particularly fabulous dancer, but I had a great time, learning this choreographed routine that we were going to perform. So just lots of time just to connect, just to spend time together, to travel together in the summer, whether it was the beach or, just visiting each other in your homes, because we all lived in such different places and had different families. So that was really exciting. I think on the kind of the national volunteer space, my favorite memories are definitely chapter installations. I love those. And I had a chance to, do one long ago, and then a chance to do some in my more recent council term. And I love that whole process and the beginning of a new group and all the alumni that come together from various chapters to install and to support. So those are definitely some of my favorite experiences and memories.
I love that. Thank you for sharing those. I have to bring it up, Jenni. You are notorious for your bad travel luck.
Yes.
And you had a very adventurous trip when you went to install, what was it, Epsilon Nu?
Alpha Psi.
Oh,
Yes.
Alpha Psi, yes.
Yes.
What happened to you, Jenni?
Well, so I fly out of Harrisburg, which is a very small airport. And so there are very few places I can get to directly. And of course, my whole early life, I flew out of BWI, very big airport. You could get wherever you needed to go, typically with one flight. But now I always have two. And so I usually fly like early in the day because I know that things can go wrong. I give myself lots of time. I'm kind of we need to be there by Thursday evening. I like to be there by, Thursday early afternoon, just to be on the safe side. But occasionally I will have a work commitment and I have to fly later in the evening. And so I know that if the first flight is delayed, things can get really sticky. And so the Harrisburg flight was delayed and delayed and delayed. And I was changing planes in Chicago, and there were lots of other ASTs flying as well. So they were, all in the airport. We landed late. There was no gate available for us. So I was technically in the airport, and if they would have let me just get off the plane and grab my luggage and run, but you can't do that, of course. So I was, I think, looking a little distressed. And at one point I asked, someone, I said, my flight's going to leave soon. My sorority sisters are trying to hold it. Is it possible for me to get off? And I should have known better. They said, no, ma'am, you need to stay in your seat. I wasn't going to leap off. I was going to only go with permission. So by the time I got off, I watched the plane fly away.
Oh, no.
The last plane that would go there until like the following day at 5. So I had to go to a different airport in Iowa. airport in Chicago promised me my luggage would be on the plane. It wasn't. So fortunately, Tiffany Street was very understanding when I got there at some strange hour without any luggage. And she let me borrow clothes, but eventually my luggage did get there. It was still fun, but it was that connecting flight piece adds a little
Wow.
level of
Well,
just,
exciting.
yeah, a little exciting. So I know the Charlotte airport well. If you ever see me running through, it's because I know I kind of plot out, okay, when you get off the airplane, you need to go, go, go. But I prefer to fly with a lot of space in my schedule just to be on the safe side.
That makes total sense. So when the universe opens back up for travel, what's on your wish list? Where would you like to go?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question.
I've talked to a few other council members and they've had great ideas. I'm like, yes, I want to go there. I would like to go there.
Yes. Well, and I think it's very hard when I travel without my boys because, they for a long time, I think, believed that AST headquarters is a little bit of like a superhero headquarters.
Oh
It'd
yeah,
be a very
totally.
cool place when you go to HQ.
Yeah.
So, um, so I don't think they have quite the right impression of where I'm going when I go to Indianapolis, but we will probably go somewhere together, and it might actually be, mine may not be as glamorous. We may be, they love Kalahari and the Poconos. It's an indoor water park.
Oh yeah.
So we may be doing something like that. There is a water slide there that I was terrified to go on. It was labeled an extreme attraction. And my boys are trying to tell me it was extreme because of the lights, but that's not the case. I did conquer my fear and go on. The last time we were there, I insisted on going forward. So I said to my 13-year-old, you have to go backwards because typically the attendant knows that I'm a scared mom and will spin me around and all of a sudden, going down the water slide. So mine will not be as glamorous. We will probably be at an indoor water park when things open back up again.
I love it. And you mentioned you kind of game out in your mind the airports and like where you need to go. Do you have some other like travel hacks or like productivity and planning hacks or apps that you like to use that you recommend?
That's a great question. I am probably a little fly by the seat of my pants. Um, I have the running joke is that I really enjoy sticky notes. And so in our curriculum office, we're all sort of our stereotypes. So we have our language arts curriculum supervisor and our social studies curriculum supervisor and our math curriculum supervisor. But the running joke is that if you get a sticky note from Jenny, it's really important. So when you leave my office, sometimes you get a sticky note. So I often have sticky notes everywhere with things I need to remember. I admire your lists at just such a high level of admiration. So my goal is to really be organized and have like the Jamie Jones Miller list going. But I have to admit, I am a little bit more, I hope I have everything packed. I haven't had time. This outfit could work. It won't. We'll see when I get there. So I have some growth in that organizational area.
Well, but on the flip side, I mean, it's just, then people say, well, you just don't leave a lot of room for creativity and spontaneity. And I'm like, well, I guess that's a good point. So, there's balance there. So last question before we wrap up.
Sure.
What would you say now to your 17, 18-year-old self about to step on foot at campus, getting there for the, fall semester, you're a freshman. What
Sure.
would you look back and what would you tell yourself?
Oh, wow. I probably would have reminded myself to just enjoy every moment of the college experience. I feel like in the moment, I felt that I was doing that, but you only get to do that once, where you are in that amazing space in your life where you really get to focus on yourself. It feels very busy, but not as busy as things, we'll get later on. And then I think I also may have convinced myself to join Alpha Sigma Tau a little earlier. I think I volunteered so early, just maybe 6 months out of college, because I just didn't feel that I had enough. I really enjoyed my experience, and I had, when I was student teaching, I was sad, not to be able to do some of the things that I had done. So I might have explored that option a little on the earlier side.
I love that. Well, thank you, Jenny. I'm glad we got the chance to talk.
Absolutely.
I'm very hopeful that in a couple weeks we'll all be together in Indianapolis for our council orientation. So I look forward to seeing you then.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janie.